Alrighty, well, welcome everybody. It's lovely to reconnect with you all again. It's been a little while since I have done a masterclass. We've had lots of our other certified trainers presenting recently, so it's great that I had the opportunity to get in and be back. I'm just going to check my messages. Paul's providing tech support, and yeah, looking good. Alrighty, let's get started, everyone. Here we go. So for those of you who haven't met me before, my name is Rachel French. I'm a full-time educational consultant and I'm based in New Zealand. I started my teaching career here in New Zealand and taught here at a school in Auckland for a couple of years and then began my overseas journey. So I moved initially to Brazil. You can see that little photo of me on the top there is me playing capoeira many, many years ago when I was living and working at a small international school in Brazil. I then moved to Egypt and worked in an international school there before moving on to an international school in Germany, where I had my first two children, and then returned home to New Zealand. Between the time that I was in Egypt and the time that I was in Germany, I had a special opportunity. I was actually moving into a part-time role when I first moved to Germany, and so I was looking for something else that I could do. And as part of that, I discovered the Erickson and Lanning Trainer Certification Institute. So I became a concept-based curriculum and instruction trainer and presenter, and that really changed the trajectory of my career. So I'm now the certified trainer. I went on to co-author concept-based curriculum and instruction for the Thinking Classroom with Dr. Erickson and Dr. Lanning. That's the blue book. It's the second edition. And then with a colleague, Carla Marshall, who I'd met at the Trainer Certification Institute, we decided that we wanted to write a book that would help teachers really think about practical strategies and what concept-based inquiry looked like in practice. So we wrote Concept-Based Inquiry in Action, which is a book and video series. I now work as a full-time educational consultant and the director of Professional Learning International. I have the fortunate opportunity to now lead the Erickson and Lanning Trainer Certification Institute. Dr. Erickson and Dr. Lanning have since fully retired from leading that institute. And I run workshops around the world and a series of online courses. We've just in March had our second CBI Learning Labs conference, which is a global conference for educators passionate about concept-based curriculum and instruction. So lots of different forms of connecting with us. We also commit to running a monthly masterclass series, which is a free event. This one here is, I think, probably, we're almost up to about 2 years of running these masterclass series, which is pretty exciting to be able to share ideas with educators from all over the world. So that's a little bit about me, but I would love to know a little bit more about you. So in the chat, can you put the number 1 if you are joining this masterclass for the very first time? You haven't joined any of our other courses or any of our other masterclasses or read any of our books. This is your first interaction with us. Just pop a number 1 in there. Oh, fantastic. Lots of first timers. Well, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. I'd love to know how you found out about the masterclass series if this is your first time. Pop a number 2 into the chat box if you have joined masterclasses before. If this is not your first time, 2, quite a few. And pop a number 3 in the chat if you have actually participated in one of our online courses or face-to-face workshops before. Some familiar names coming through here now. Well, welcome back. It's lovely to see you all again. And a number 4 in the chat if you came to the Learning Labs conference this year or last year. Again, some familiar faces. Fantastic. All right. And some said both, been at both conferences. And a number 5 if you're a member of the Concept-Based Inquiry Collaborative. It's great to see who we've got here. And a number 6 if you're one of our certified trainers. Some people have got probably all the numbers except for one here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Awesome. Well, it's great to have such a experienced group of CBI educators and some people who are new to the mix. Let us know also in the chat where you're joining us from today. What country are you living in at the moment? Netherlands, India, Korea, Hong Kong, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, India. Wow, can hardly keep up. India, Cyprus, China, Philippines. Fantastic. What a global community we've got, which is pretty exciting. All right. So the process that I am going to share with you today is a process that I have worked through myself when I was working in the role of curriculum coordinator. It's a process that I've worked through as a consultant when I've been working with schools, and as a process that I found myself sharing over and over again to our participants in the CBI Collaborative on our monthly calls, and to our certified trainers when they would say, okay, I'm ready to review our curriculum. What tips or advice have you got? And so I would find myself spending 15 or 20 minutes each time talking through a process. And since that time, lots of educators around the world have used this process or modified versions of this process to review their own curriculum. So I'm sure that many of you have also reviewed your own curriculum on multiple occasions, and I would love, as we're presenting today, if you could also share ideas that have worked for your own school in relation to the kind of stage of the process that we're working at. Because this is just one way that we found that it's really successful in reviewing curriculum. So if you've tried some of these strategies, please share in the chat box that you've tried them and how they've gone in your school. If you've used other strategies that are intended for the same purpose, also we'd love to hear that in the chat. This is a community where we're all here to share ideas and experience. So would love to have a really active chat where you're all kind of supporting each other and sharing ideas. Just a quick note, last call for those who are interested in attending the Erickson and Lanning CBCI Trainer Certification Institute. Our registration for our August start closes on May 20th. So make sure that you get your applications in. We only take 60 participants each year. And at this stage, we've only got 23 places left. So if you're interested in becoming a certified trainer, make sure you get your applications in the next couple of weeks before we close registration on that. I will talk a little bit more about that at the end of this call. So our 5-step process for curriculum review. I'm going to go through each of these steps and share a little bit about how we've used them and some different strategies that you can use to achieve each. So step 1 is getting other teachers on board, making a case for change and building a shared understanding of why we are about to review or embark on a review of curriculum. We know that teachers put hours and hours into designing units, and when we then say, hey, we think it's time to change up some of those units, that can be stressful for teachers. I've had teachers in the past say, if you change the curriculum again, I'm going to resign. I'm sick of it. And so how do we get teachers from that place to a place that they can embrace that change and actually see the need for that change? Step 2 is some research into what are some possible topics or what should our curriculum include. So part 1 of that is working with teachers and looking at different national curriculums. And then step 3 is also research, and part 2 is other stakeholders. Step 4 is a sorting, grouping, and confirming topics process. And then step 5 is the final sequencing of units. So what do I mean by curriculum review? Well, you can probably find as many different definitions of curriculum as there are people on this Zoom call today. There's definitely lots of different academic writers sharing different opinions on what is curriculum. But for today's purpose specifically, when I'm talking about curriculum review, I'm really talking about a process for deciding what content or topics we will be studying. Now, that could mean reviewing your program of inquiry if you are in a PYP school, or if you are working in a middle school, that might mean mapping out the scope and sequence of the science units that you're teaching from grade 6 through to grade 10 or through to grade 12. or the same for your social studies or humanities team to say, what are the units that we are studying from when they start with us in grade 6 through to the time that they finish with us. So that might be your department review. That's the focus of today's session. We're not getting into curriculum writing today. That would be writing the understandings, knowledge, and skills for those units. We're really focusing on how do we decide first and foremost, what are the topics or what is the content that we need to study with our students? And how do we keep that meaningful and relevant? Now, small, disclosure statement. The images that I'm sharing with you today are either images from events that we've had in the past, or the images that I'm showing of cards are ones that I've recreated. I realized as I put together this presentation that every time I go through this process with a school, I then leave them with all the work that their teachers have created, and I didn't have any of the cards here in the office that I could then take photos of and share, because they're all back in the schools where we've developed the work. So I have recreated the cards today, and you'll sort of get a sense of that, but I've recreated the images to give you a sense of the process that we work with. So the cards that you're seeing today are not from actual curriculum reviews, but they do represent some of the ideas that have come up with in curriculum reviews. So before we begin a curriculum review process, we first need to ask ourselves, is change in fact needed, and to what extent? So do we have an articulated learning journey for our students would be the first question that I would be asking. Some of the schools that I've worked with in the past actually design and redesign their units every year. And I definitely see this a lot with New Zealand and Australian schools. There's this belief that kind of came about 10 to 15 years ago, I think, maybe even a little bit longer actually. It was before I moved internationally. Schools moved away from having set topics for each grade level and shifted towards the whole school doing the same topic at the same time. Now, the idea there was two-part. One was that teachers can, if they teach the same unit for many, many years in a row, just be pulling out the same engagements and not really responding to the individual needs of students. The other part of that was that by having every grade level study the same unit at the same time, there would be these rich opportunities for cross-grade level, cross-year group collaboration. However, the schools that I have worked with, I have seen huge problems with this approach because there is no articulated learning journey for the students. And oftentimes there's not even a record that's being kept of the learning journey of each grade level. So what we tend to see is the same units on repeat, and that we don't have a well-balanced curriculum. So if you're in a position where you don't yet have an articulated curriculum set in place, then you're definitely in the right place. It's time to get that set up and established to ensure that you have breadth and depth and an intentional curriculum, rather than a curriculum that you're designing every year on the fly. The next question I would be asking is, in terms of to what extent is change needed, are you providing breadth and depth in the units that you're teaching? So if you look across the units that your school is teaching, whether it's your program of inquiry or your science and social studies units, or the units that you're teaching in your department in the middle school, do you feel that you have significant breadth and depth, or are there significant gaps and overlaps in that curriculum? And so we'll start to look at some strategies to help identify that as we go through, but a lot of curriculum coordinators already have a sense of that. You can look at your unit and go, well, actually, we don't really have much opportunity for students to be engaging in chemistry in our program of inquiry. We only have one unit on properties of materials, but we're not doing anything on states of matter, those kinds of things. You'll have a sense of that. We'll also look at this process for review. You also need to ask yourselves, are you approaching units in the same way? And this one I actually find more significant for middle school teachers, and especially in humanities departments, where you have some year levels which are approaching units in a much broader or conceptual way. So you've got units for your year group like human migration, revolution, power and oppression, government systems, rights and leadership, or human rights. But then they move into grade 7 the next year, and it's very, very topic-based. So you're looking at units like Martin Luther King and the American Civil Rights Movement, ancient Greece, or the French Revolution. Now, either approach can be used in a concept-based curriculum. You can have these units that are locked very much in time, place, or situation, and from that extract concepts, or you can use the more conceptual approach where you have a broader unit, as we see here in the grade 6, but you need to be consistent, because you can see here with these two approaches, when we look at revolution in grade 6, that's going to touch on some of the content of Martin Luther King and the French Revolution that's in grade 7. And when you look at your human rights unit, we're also going to see the content from the Martin Luther King and American Civil Rights Movement being encroached on. So we need to make sure that we're approaching our units in the same way, and we have consistency and agreement in the way that we design those units. The next question that I would be asking in terms of to what extent is change needed is the content meaningful and relevant to the students that we teach? When I first worked in Egypt, there was a historic unit there on on Tudor times. And we were working with a very Egyptian population, but studying very, very British curriculum units because we're identified as a British school. But the content that we were studying was very much about English history, and yet we were living and working with Egyptian students. We can also ask ourselves, are the stories, the people, the cultures, the language and history and traditions of our population included in our units? And sometimes in international schools, this can be a little bit more challenging because we have a group of educators who've come through with often with a very Western education. And that's the history that we know. They are the stories that we know. When we think about who are the scientists or the famous mathematicians that we look at, we often think of European scientists. And actually, if you look at history and look back at many of the ideas that came up from those European scientists and European mathematicians those ideas had already been discovered by Arabic or Asian scientists and mathematicians, and yet the credit still goes to somebody European. So making sure that we are, whose perspective of history are we telling? Making sure that women's voices are being represented in those historical cases of scientists. And actually sometimes that involves bringing in families and people from the local community to help us contribute to what is the important knowledge, skills, and understandings for our students. We want to make sure that the content is meaningful and relevant also to our local context. So previously, I was talking about the body of students that we're working with. So in some international schools, that's very diverse. In some schools, you might have mostly students from one culture, but we sometimes have a very diverse student population, and we have to consider also our local context. So are the stories, people, culture, languages, and traditions from our local context represented in our units? And is our local culture understood? And are the needs of our local community supported? Are we making our community a better place? So what contribution are we actually giving back to our local community through supporting students in taking meaningful action in their local community is another question that we should be asking of our curriculum design. And then finally, is there an articulated learning journey from early years right through to high school? So some of us are working in schools where early years through to high school is on the same campus or under the same school umbrella. Others are actually working in schools where students are feeding from a number of different early years places into an elementary school, and then again feeding out into different middle school opportunities for students. So we need to be keeping the conversations open and knowing what the units are. Too often when I'm consulting with schools, we'll find that there's an ecosystems unit in grade 5 in elementary, and then again in grade 6 in middle school. And if that's intentional, fine, but make sure it is intentional. Mostly we want to be making sure that we're building that progression more intentionally, and maybe we would be doing ecosystems in grade 4 and not again till grade 8, for example, to make sure that there's a build on that progression. So what is the new learning? And how similar or different is the migration unit that you teach in elementary to the middle school unit on migration? To actually know, have you had the opportunity to sit down with your elementary teachers and your middle school teachers to have those conversations? Those of you who are already working in concept-based schools, who have articulated 5 to 9 understandings for each of your units, then you have a special opportunity to be able to say, here are the understandings for elementary, here are the understandings from middle school. Have we got that progression in an appropriate way? Are we building on the learning from elementary to middle school? And how would we support those students who are coming from other schools and haven't already studied that elementary unit? And then finally, do the units help our students prepare for that complex world that we have in their future? We know that the world is going to be much more complex for this generation than it has been for any generation in the past. They will have to deal with challenges that require multiple solutions working together. And are we empowering students to see themselves as change makers capable of making a difference in the world? Are our units helping students to connect with other young people who are change makers, who are making a difference and really addressing these complex ideas? So that's just a checklist to run through to decide, is change needed? We need to be mindful of what we are asking of teachers when we decide that our curriculum needs an extensive and widespread review. Because to write these units, I've often said it takes at least a full day, if not longer, to design a unit. And so if we're asking students to change, if we're asking teachers to change 3 or 4 or all 6 of their units in a year, or for our middle school teachers completely rewrite their curriculum, then we need to be pretty sure that that change is needed. And then we have to help teachers to establish that need for change. We need teachers to be buying into that process, to see why this is going to improve learning outcomes for students and see why this is important. Because teachers don't get into teaching because they want an easy job, but they have to know teaching is hard. Teachers are working under increasingly pressured standards in terms of what they need to report on and the work that they are doing. So we need to make sure that those teachers are aware of and on board with why we are making changes and provide opportunities for voice and ownership in that process. So I'm going to share with you now 3 strategies that you can use to help make a case for change and help get all teachers on board with and excited about what a change in units might look like. So the 3 strategies that I'm going to share all come from the book that Carla and I wrote, Concept-Based Inquiry in Action. It's a tiny little image there, the green book. And they are all strategies to engage. And the thing that I love about using these strategies with teachers is it allows them to be back in the role of student and see how these strategies can be practically used in the classrooms. So using strategies that we could use with students in our teachers' professional learning is incredibly powerful in inspiring them to start to use these kinds of strategies. So we'll look at a silent discussion, a spiderweb discussion, and a 4-corner debate as different strategies to support getting teachers on board with and understanding the need for change. So the first is a silent conversation. The way that a silent conversation works, for those who are not familiar with it, is that teachers, or if you're doing it in the classroom, your students respond to a question or prompt through written dialogue. So this is, instead of having an oral conversation, we're actually writing our conversation. Some possible prompts for this would be, what is curriculum? How does your school program of inquiry provide a well-articulated, or sorry, not how does, do students or do teachers think that the program of inquiry provides a well-articulated learning journey for students free from significant gaps or overlaps, and why or why not? And why should our students learn that, what should our students learn that we were not taught at school, and defend your stance? So these are 3 possible silent conversation statements, but you need to decide what it is that's relevant for your school or your teachers in terms of why there needs to be change. This first one, what is curriculum? I've used with a school who didn't have that curriculum in place, a school that were developing new units every year and didn't have that articulated learning journey for students. So it was helping teachers to see that we didn't actually have a shared understanding of what is curriculum and what is its purpose. You might find that that's not the place that your teachers are at. You might find that actually the issue is more that there are gaps and overlaps in your program of inquiry. The advantage in presenting it in this way is that teachers can actually hear from their colleagues that their colleagues see significant gaps or overlaps in the curriculum. And so it gives an opportunity for that messaging to not be coming top down, but actually becoming bottom up. The teachers are sharing and discussing the need for change. The way that it works is you would introduce the prompt and then give teachers 3 to 5 minutes to think and write ideas about it individually. And then you would ask them to swap papers. So just like you would do in a conversation, then the conversation is passed to someone else. And each person will then read what has been written and spend 2 to 3 minutes responding through writing. They can respond through sharing thoughts, opinions, questions, or ideas, and it's meant to be an organic, free flow of ideas. That process then of passing the paper and adding to the conversation gets repeated 2 or 3 times before it goes back to the original owner of the paper. Now, the next strategy is a spider web discussion, and this one I've adapted a little bit from the way that it's used in the book. This is designed to explore connections or overlaps and gaps in your existing curriculum and really make explicit what they are. So the way that I've done this is you would give each teacher a green card with the outline of one of their units. So if you've got a program of inquiry, it might just be cutting out the little piece from their program of inquiry that says the central idea and lines of inquiry. Or in some cases, it might just be writing down the main topic. Then you give each teacher 2 to 5 minutes to prepare bullet points on the key learning in that unit. Okay, and then they have only 1 minute each where they will present their unit. So once each teacher is ready, what you would do is group all of your teachers from the same grade level together. So you will stand in a big circle and all the grade 1 teachers would be together, then all the grade 2 teachers, then all the grade 3 teachers together. And you would start, if you're working in your program of inquiry, with one transdisciplinary theme, and you would have a teacher from each grade level present what they teach in that unit. So you would have 1 minute to present, and then you would ask the rest of the circle, does anyone in that grade level connect to this unit? Do you have something that you teach that would be the same content? And if they say, yes, we teach the same content as that, we're grade 3, we're actually teaching the same thing that you're teaching in kindergarten, then you would connect grade 1, the person who shared it, and someone in the grade 3 team with a blue piece of string. Now, if someone in another team said, we don't actually teach that, but we definitely could in our unit. In the unit that we teach, it would make sense for us to take on that content. Then you would connect them with a red piece of ribbon or string. So that means that the units are closely related and there potentially could be some overlap there. The blue is, we definitely see that there is overlap between those curriculum areas. You'll work around all of the units. Now, it depends on how big your school is. You might only have 1 teacher in each grade level, so you might want to do this over a couple of staff meetings where you're sharing the different transdisciplinary themes, or if you're working in middle school, you might want to do a couple of grade levels and then see where those connections are and then take a break and do something different, or you could just keep going for the full time of your staff meeting. You also want to include some opportunities for other units that are not there. So this would be looking for what are the gaps in your curriculum. As a leadership team, you may already have a sense of what some of those are. So those gaps are intended to be designed for teachers to see, oh yeah, we don't actually teach that. There's no one here in this room that's teaching anything like that. So you would ask your admin teachers or teachers maybe who are your EAL support or your learning support teachers who don't actually have a specific unit to share a little description of a unit that no one is teaching. And then just ask, does anyone connect to this? Does anyone covering this content? So the idea here is to expose some of those gaps. And then you'll have that spider web of string to go, wow, we've actually got a lot of overlap here, and we've got some quite big gaps where there are things that are not being taught. And this is a way of creating a visual model of the need for change. All right. And then the final one is a four-corner debate. So the four-corner debate is designed to highlight issues with your current curriculum design. So in this strategy, teachers take a stance on a provocative statement and use the four corners of the classroom to group themselves based on their opinion. So the corners are labeled as strongly agree, disagree, and strongly disagree. And this is a great strategy that can be used to highlight any issues that you've got in your program of inquiry or in the units that you're teaching. Some possible four-corner debate statements that I have used as part of this process is 4 units in a year is the ideal number of units to provide opportunities for both breadth and depth of learning. This is one that I did here with the school in New Zealand. I know that a lot of middle schools also have 4 units in a year. I did this because I actually noticed that the teachers in the school were often not really starting units until week 3 or week 4 of the term, because they had so long. And as part of this four-corner debate, I remember one of the teachers saying, oh, we used to have 3 terms in a year here in New Zealand, and we taught 6 units in a year. When we moved to 4 terms in a year instead of 3 terms, we decided to teach 4 units in a year. So it was that arbitrary, not that we think that 4 units provides the right amount of coverage or gives us more time to go into depth in our units. We wanted this to be a debate, though. It's not about what the leadership team think or what I was thinking as a consultant. It was actually a debate for the teachers to say, is 4 the right number to be teaching in a year? Ultimately, they did decide to move to 6 units in a year after that and to trial that for a year. Our curriculum is well balanced, providing a well-articulated learning journey for students. That's a little bit like the one that we were doing for the four-corner debate, for the silent discussion. Here again, we're letting the issues kind of bubble up from the teachers rather than somebody in leadership saying, there's a problem, we need to change. The teachers are having an open opportunity to discuss why the curriculum does or doesn't provide balance. We currently take advantage of common units for cross-grade collaboration. There's another one that we've done before. Our units of inquiry provide opportunities for hands-on scientific experimentation. I've done this in schools where we see lots and lots of plants and animals right through the curriculum, but not enough rigorous kind of scientific investigation. And then the stories, people, culture, language, and traditions of our students are represented in our curriculum. So I'd love to know in the chat if you've used any or all of these strategies before as part of your curriculum review and how that's gone. And if you have used the four-corner debate or silent discussion, I'd love to hear what prompts you used in your classroom so that you can share them with others. Perhaps you've got prompts that are relevant also to their school context. So just go ahead and pop them into the chat if you've used these or other strategies. I'd love to hear what you do in your school to help to help teachers see the need for change and make that case for change before you get started in reviewing your curriculum. I'll give you a moment to pop that through and then I'll continue through, but keep watching the chat for ideas from our colleagues around the world because it might take a little while to type up some of those ideas. All right, so step 2 is looking at the research. What content should we include? And the first place to start here is with our teachers. So what I like to do first is to ask teachers what they're currently teaching and what they think we should include, and then we review our national curriculum documents. So the first part to this is simply saying, what do we teach? And for this whole process, I love to use these kind of index cards here. I feel like they're about the right size. And in this case, I avoid sticky notes because in this process, if you use sticky notes, you're going to get very stuck because we want to group and regroup these cards, and it's easier if they don't stick to each other. You can also use just cut up colored paper or colored card for this process if index cards are not easily accessible. So first we start by asking teachers, what do we teach? And for my teachers, I, in this case, chose white cards and just said, what are you currently teaching? Write each topic, one per card. So they just wrote main headings here: ecosystems, the human body, living things, migration, healthy lifestyles, and so on. Then we add in another colored pen, but still on a white card. What do you think we should teach that we're not currently teaching? And so one of the schools, some of the things that came out were keeping ourselves safe, and ideas like stranger danger isn't currently anywhere in our program of inquiry. How do we teach children what to do when they're lost, or what to do if they feel unsafe, or why it's important to follow rules? So that was identified as an important unit to include. We also had ideas around digital citizenship, cyberbullying, and cyber safety that wasn't in our program of inquiry and teachers felt needed to be included. And then ideas around the human brain were a few of the ideas that came up from teachers. But this is an open, free-flowing brainstorm. At this point, we're not using any documents or anything else. We want to get teachers' ideas down first. We typically do this by dividing them into groups of about 4 is an ideal number, and at this stage working in different grade levels. So I'd love to know, are there any units that you think should be taught at your school that you're not currently teaching? Let us know in the chat if there are any units or any topics that you think we really should be teaching this and we're not. I'd love to hear those ideas. It might give us inspiration for those who are reviewing their programs of inquiry to hear what some of those units are. So pop them into the chat. Oh, financial literacy, entrepreneurship. Yes, they are so important. Death, peace and conflict, conflict resolution, processes of writing and design, AI and technology. Yes, climate change, research. Yeah, research is an interesting one. Research you need something to do research about, but making sure it's well embedded in our curriculum. Coding, citizenship, great, keep those ideas coming. All right, so next step, part still of step 2, because it's done by the teacher, that's why we keep it as the step 2, is researching our national curriculum documents. Now, some of you, that will be a national curriculum that you're looking at. For others, you have a choice. And so when I was working in international schools, we would usually review multiple curriculum documents. So what I would do there is I would put people into mixed groups of 4 or 5, and we might do this over 2 or 3 staff meetings where we say, okay, today we're focused on science, and I'm going to give one group the NGSS science standards. I'm going to give another group the Australian curriculum science standards. I'm going to give another group, I think there's aero science standards. We might have a group who are looking at our local curriculum. So if you're working in a school in China or Germany, have a group who can read the Chinese or the German documents. So you're getting your local curriculum included there too. And what we're doing at this stage is actually creating new cards. So it's okay at this point and desirable even if there are repeats with the cards that we wrote previously. So if teachers had identified it on their white cards, we've put aside all those cards as one stack for now. And we're going through and looking at, that was what we thought should be taught as teachers. Now we're saying, what do curriculums tell us we need to teach? So some of those might be the same, but you can see here it's tiny and that's fine. I've just gone through one page of a New Zealand science curriculum, and these were the topics that came out: the solar system, the rock cycle, evolution, living things, which included both life cycles and habitats, and the water cycle was all identified on that page. So just again, one card for each topic. Now, if you've got people working with different curriculum topics, then they should all be writing. You might see the water cycle come up in every topic, and that's okay. But each one's being identified on a blue card. For those of you who are working in PYP schools, a special note at this stage, you would then move into looking at the descriptors of the transdisciplinary themes and also put them into a blue card, because the PYP transdisciplinary themes are part of the PYP curriculum framework. So I don't do it before I get teachers' ideas. I actually do it at this point after we've had the opportunity for teachers to freely brainstorm ideas. We then move into step 3, which is research with other stakeholders. And here it's important to make sure that all of these stakeholders understand why we're doing this. So why are you reviewing curriculum, and why do you need their involvement? So depending on which group of stakeholders you're involved in, you'll need to think about ways to make this meaningful to that group of stakeholders. But who might those stakeholders be? They could be parents, students, teaching assistants, local Indigenous groups, staff from early years to grade 12. So if you are a middle school reviewing their curriculum, how will you engage with your elementary colleagues, and how will you engage with your high school colleagues as part of this process? If you are early years, how are you engaging with the elementary teachers to make sure that you've got that curriculum alignment? Maybe even your local universities, if you're upper middle and high school, with past students. So past students can provide a lot of insight into what I wish I knew before I started middle school, what I didn't feel I didn't learn in primary, or what I feel I didn't learn before I left high school that would have really helped me prepare for university. So if you can engage with your past students and invite your future students to the table, what would you like to learn about as you come into our middle school program? Your board of trustees is a captive audience that you have meetings with regularly, so asking them for input, and local businesses. Anyone else I've forgotten? Let me know in the chat box. Who else could we be engaging with as meaningful, relevant stakeholders in this curriculum review process? And then how might we do this? Through surveys, through focus groups, through student council or student committees getting involved in this review process to gather feedback, and even as part of homework. So we find that when we invite parents in for a focus group, we'll typically get 15 to 20 from across the school. Does that sound familiar to anyone? But if you send it home as part of your student homework, you are more likely to get responses from most of the parents in the school. So think about how you want to engage parents and give them multiple opportunities to engage. So just because you've done it for homework doesn't mean that those 15 or 20 who really feel like they need their voice heard or who have something to say don't get that opportunity to come in and say. We've had parents really thank us and feel excited about being involved and invited into this process before. Possible questions for parents. Here's just a few to kind of get you started. And I deliberately haven't given you all of them because it's important that you work through the questions that are meaningful for your parent group. But you might ask them, based on your interactions with the school so far, what units do you know we teach? The reason for this would be you want to know what parents know and what they don't know. So what units are they hearing nothing about from their students, or what units they have kind of forgotten about along the way? And then which ones are really memorable to parents? What have been some of your children's favorite units or learning engagements? Do you think that the units are developmentally and culturally appropriate for your child or children? Thinking specifically then about social studies. What local stories, traditions, knowledge, places, or historic events would you like your child to learn more about? And when we did this question, we asked from a local sense and then on a global scale. So thinking about, in that case, it was New Zealand history and global, but also you might ask, if you're in an international school, from your own culture, from our local culture, and from a global culture. So you can have part A, B, and C to these questions. And then you want to explore different subject areas if you're working across reviewing multiple curriculum documents or reviewing all of your science and social studies. So thinking about design technology, what would you like your child to learn about? We've asked about literacy, about maths. So giving parents opportunities to provide feedback across subject areas. Now I'm going to put it to you. What questions would you ask your students as part of a curriculum review? I'd love to hear in the chat your experiences here. What questions might you ask students? Obviously, it will depend on the age of the students. So Douglas is saying, in our experience, invitations for stakeholder feedback has led to, the chat box is jumping on me, offers from outside experts who are keen to participate. Yeah, absolutely. So getting outside experts, getting local artists in, getting local business owners in to say, you know, especially if you're doing, you know, we heard financial literacy and entrepreneurship was important. What might that look like? Some possibility thinking around that. Great questions here coming through in the chat now for our students. Which unit was most challenging and why? Which unit did you like the most and why? What was your favorite unit? What topic would excite you the most? Same as the parent questions. Yeah, absolutely. You can use many of the same questions. Which unit encouraged you to think? Oh, I like that. What do you want to learn about in school? What problems have you faced? What do you expect from this unit? What interests them? And what did they miss from previous schooling? Yeah, so that's a great question to be asking if you have students who have moved through different school systems. What would you like to see add to the unit? When we asked our students this question, the number one thing that came up from primary school students or elementary students was, we wish that we could do science at this school, which really shocked us because we felt that they did a lot of science. And so we had to say, well, what do you mean by that? And they said, you know, experiments where we get to mix things together. So they actually didn't see a lot of the science that they were doing as science and had, you know, that sort of stereotypical science view of the world and felt like they'd done no science. So actually getting in and asking students those opportunities for what do you mean by science? What would you like to learn about there? All right, so the next step, step 4, after we have done our research with our teachers, with our curriculum, and with our other stakeholders, is to start to sort and group our topics. So in the teachers process, we created the white cards and the blue cards, and then we actually, as a curriculum team, did the cards for students and parents because we'd used some survey questions rather than just having them write on a card like this. So we took the surveys and scribed it onto cards as topics. And the reason we did this was for the next step so that we could actually then start to sort and group. So then as a small team, I didn't do this with all of the teachers only because I didn't feel like it was going to be good use of their time. It could have taken us a full year of staff meetings to review curriculum if we'd had them involved in every step of this. So some of it we were bringing back to teachers. We started to group topics. So you can see in the middle, the blue one says the solar system. From students, they said they would like to learn about Elon Musk and space exploration. Another student said they wanted to learn about stars and moons and planets. On the student cards, we did put their grade level of the students that were saying that to keep track of at what age were they interested in these topics. We had a group of parents who were quite interested here in the area where we live. There's a dark sky reserve. So the last time I did this in my local community, there was this idea of light pollution and also a space junk. So a really environmental perspective on space. And them all also just saying we'd like them to learn about planets and space and beyond. So then they got grouped together. And we grouped those together basically just by putting a paper clip or a rubber band around them, and we would end up with stacks like this. The really interesting thing here was, and the reason that we did this on separate cards but kept the colors relevant, was that we could start to see the thickness of the stack. So we would start to see, well, this one is full of blue cards. So every curriculum that we looked at was suggesting that this topic was important. And we see it from the parents and we see it from the teachers, but no student mentioned an interest in this topic or something like that. So we could just start to analyze those stacks in a slightly more informal way and just say, oh, this one, the rock cycle only came up once across all of those curriculum things, and it was just from different curriculum documents. So it allowed us to really have that analysis time to see how often are these ideas coming through and how would they look together. It also meant that actually some of our original program of inquiry topics got put together, or some of the topics that had been studied got put together in one stack, and it didn't need to be 2 different units. That we then went through a process of saying, well, this is what our parents have said, this is what the students and other stakeholders have said, this is what curriculum documents are saying, but what do you think? You are the educators of these students. So I want you to use a traffic light system to green light, orange light, or red light these units. Green means, yes, we absolutely should teach them. In an ideal world, we'd teach all of this content. Orange is, look, we would really only teach that if we had time. But if we had to drop it, that would be okay. And then red was, I don't feel that this content is appropriate for students at this age. And so that would be the one that came up for us was some teachers felt that evolution should be left for middle school and other teachers put a green dot on it. So not all groups will see it the same way. But it gives teachers that voice in terms of saying, well, just because we collected all this data from our community doesn't mean that we agree that that's appropriate content for our students. And then finally, in step 5, we started to sequence the units. And at this point, it depends on the size of the team. If you're a middle school department working on this, probably your team is small enough to work right through this process. If you're a school that's only got a couple of teachers at each grade level, then you might be small enough to all work through this process together. But if you're a team that's got 5 teachers in every grade level, you want to engage teachers in this process, and then the last step of it in confirming units will need to be done by a smaller team. We always give teachers an opportunity to be a part of that, so it doesn't become just our leadership team. It's anybody who wants to be a part of a final curriculum review process and confirm the units. We'll do it after school on a non-staff meeting day. Come along if you'd like to be a part of it. But what we do before we take it back to that team is ask teachers to sequence the units. So you can see here, they've still got their dots on them, but we ask them not to say what grade level should teach these units, but in a developmental progression, which units would be taught to our youngest learners and which units would be taught to our oldest learners. How would you sequence that? And it didn't have to be just, in a straight line. We could have 3 or 4 deep, that was fine, but it allowed teachers to start to go, yeah, this would need to be taught before that, or this isn't really appropriate for younger learners, it needs to come further up the curriculum. Teachers know that there had to be a balance across the years, so they'd go, oh yeah, I would put this higher, but actually there's not enough down here, we could move this one down, that would be okay, and help them to have a little bit of a say in terms of the sequence of the unit without saying, I'm the grade 2 teacher and I must teach this unit. Then finally, we took that to a smaller team, as I mentioned. Oops, sorry, I've got to go to my next set. And that smaller team looked at the transdisciplinary themes that they fit in for a program of inquiry review, or if you're teaching in a department team, it might be one lead from each year level to start to sequence that out. So the transdisciplinary themes and the progression sequence would be 2 factors here. And the third one is, what are we currently teaching? So we don't want to move units around unnecessarily. If grade 2 have been teaching it and it could go in grade 1, 2, or 3, give it back to grade 2 so they don't have more new units, unless you know that they've expressed an interest in not teaching that unit, which does happen sometimes. So do try and put the units back where they came from, where that's appropriate as a first point, so that you're not overwhelming teachers with all brand new units. Sometimes in this process, you will have teams or teachers that do end up with all or mostly brand new units. And if that's the case, then be really mindful of giving them the time for that. So you've heard me recommend in the past, if you've joined me before, that I've always said you need at least a day, if not longer, to plan a new unit from scratch. So be aware of that. That way you can start to put your units back into and under your themes and get your progression right, it becomes a jigsaw puzzle. I love that part. It's actually my favorite part, to jigsaw it all back together. Not everybody does. And so that's why you need to make that part of the process optional, but try and include representation from different grade levels. Now, part of this process is to build an understanding for the need to change, to create teacher agency in terms of ownership and voice in that process. So through your debate or your silent discussion or your spiderweb conversations, you actually created this understanding for the need for change. And then you gave them voice in what do you think should be in or should be out. They heard from their colleagues, not from a leadership team, we need to teach these other units. They saw it come from parents and from students, so they know where these ideas have come from. And we've considered diverse perspectives in this process, and ideally that is diverse perspectives including the wider community to really engage with what should be taught. And we've acknowledged and created some separation from what we're currently doing in order to give us the space to reorganize it in a way that makes sense ultimately for the learning journey of our students. So sometimes you'll find in your curriculum review process that there are small tweaks and it only needs to be done at the unit level. But if you know that you need to engage in a full curriculum review process, then this 5-step process has been created with that in mind. All right. Now, the next step, and we're not going to go into detail on this today, but I do want to share it because I'm really aware that there are a number of teachers here who are joining us for the first time. The next step would be to write your understandings, knowledge, and skills for these units. So that's when we start to get into the unit design, which you can do with each grade level team. But the piece that I would challenge you to is considering moving beyond just one conceptual understanding in a unit. So if you're currently working in a school where you have either no understandings, you just have knowledge and skills, or you have one central idea or one statement of inquiry, we recommend moving from one understanding to 5 to 9 understandings in a unit. So if you had a unit, we had the solar system example earlier, if you had a unit where you had a central idea of patterns in the movement of moon, planets, and stars can be observed, described, and predicted. It's great, but it's just one understanding. And we have 5 to 9 weeks we have typically 6 to 8 weeks for a unit. So our students are capable of more than one understanding. You might also want them to understand that planets create a clear path of orbit around their star or stars containing enough gravity to form a spherical shape. We might also want them to understand space junk or space debris left behind by humans can endanger future space missions. We might want them to understand that moons orbit bodies like planets, dwarf planets, or asteroids that already orbit a star. And we might also want them to understand that the tilt on a planet's axis, the shape of its orbit, its atmosphere, and the average distance from a star contributes to the weather and seasons on the planet. So that next step is building out 5 to 9 understandings that we want our students to develop over time. Now, if you're looking to build leadership capacity in terms of curriculum development personally or within your school, then I do want to share something about the Trainer Certification Institute. I did speak to it a little bit at the beginning of the session, but I'm going to share a video now that outlines why the Trainer Certification Institute was created and a little bit more about what's involved. So Paul, if you could just play that video for us now.
Concept-based curriculum and instruction is gaining momentum around the world as schools recognise the value of this powerful approach that develops students' ability to think critically while preparing them to apply what they learn in schools to the diverse and novel contexts of modern society. But too many educators are struggling. There are so many misconceptions out there that are leaving teachers feeling confused about how to transform their practice and unlock the power of a concept-based approach. All too often, people are reading a couple of chapters of a book and then going out there to lead a workshop on material that they really don't understand themselves. There's a very real risk that without a global network of leaders who deeply understand a concept-based approach, the incredible power of this approach will be abandoned before it's ever fully realized in schools around the world. We've seen that pendulum swing in education before, where something great gets thrown out before teachers have had the opportunity to unlock its potential. And the worst part is, it's the students who'll lose out if we see a push back to the traditional drill and kill of facts and skills, because we failed to help teachers understand that facts and skills provide the foundation for conceptual thinking. It's the students who miss out when teachers rob them of the opportunity to do the thinking and realize the potential of learning transfer. And the really scary thing is, everyone's future's at stake if this generation of students are not prepared to think critically, see opportunities, solve problems, and face the challenges of this new world that we live in. The time is now. We have to build a movement of educators who are able to lead the way, untangling all of those misconceptions and confidently providing clarity for educators who see the potential of concept-based approach but need a pathway to move forward. So, let me ask you this. Are you one of a special breed of educators who's looking to make an impact and be part of the future of education? Are you searching for a framework that will empower students and teachers alike to become independent thinkers with deep, lasting understanding? There's a growing need for educators like you who are willing to really invest time and effort to deeply understand concept-based curriculum design so that you can provide strong models, demonstrate classroom practice, and coach other educators. Imagine the ripple effect that comes from transforming education and developing a generation of learners capable of thinking for themselves and solving complex problems. So let me ask you this. Are you ready to become an Erickson & Lanning CBCI certified trainer? The Certification Institute offers advanced learning and development opportunities to prepare you with the understanding, knowledge, and skills to lead workshops and support schools with cutting-edge concept-based curriculum design. This certification could be right for you if you're an experienced educator or school leader ready to be part of this global movement. The Erickson & Lanning CBCI Trainer Certification is a 9-month online program designed to develop a deep understanding of concept-based curriculum and instruction so that you're able to fluently and confidently explain the principles to others. The program has been intentionally designed to provide you with a combination of online courses with self-paced learning through recorded video modules, live interactive Zoom sessions, and one-on-one coaching. The 4 online courses throughout the year are designed to deepen your understanding of concept-based curriculum and prepare you with all the information and resources you need to establish yourself as a trainer. Plus, the live interaction and the collaboration through our weekly Zoom calls, you get to practice crafting clear generalizations at different grade levels and in different subject areas, so that you can confidently lead curriculum design. And through practice coaching sessions, you'll develop the skills to provide effective feedback and offer clarity in curriculum development that helps teachers to fix common curriculum design errors so that you can cut through the frustration. In addition, you'll also have the opportunity to participate in a series of concept-based lessons so that you can really experience what it's like to organize case studies in order to see patterns and make connections. Then we'll guide you to deconstruct these lessons so that you can design your own learning experiences that empower students to think conceptually. Over the course of the year, you'll design and receive specific feedback on 3 concept-based units and 2 concept-based lessons that you can implement in your own school or classroom. The one-to-one coaching with our specialist team allows you to address misconceptions and hone your skills to truly unlock the power of a concept-based approach and coach others to do the same. Once certified, you'll also receive access to Dr. Erickson and Dr. Lanning's full set of presentation materials with videos of live training so that you can always refer back to them as you prepare to present. This is your opportunity to learn from highly experienced trainers who field-tested CBCI presentations, so the structure follows a logical sequence so that audiences are able to comfortably process the flow of ideas and experience success in their own unit design. Now, I recognize that this is not for everybody. In order to be a pedagogical leader in education, you need to be ready to invest in your own learning. The investment of time and finances is equivalent to that of a master's degree. However, this goes well beyond theory. The Erickson and Lanning CBCI trainer certification is filled with practical application, modeling, coaching, and collaboration. And it provides opportunities to transform your classroom practice, your curriculum, your school, and your career. This is for concept-based educators who are ready to deepen their understanding and move into leadership positions. So, if you're a passionate educator looking to lead professional development that can ignite educational change, and you're driven to be a leader in curriculum design and professional learning, joining a global movement of educators who are committed to transforming education as we know it, then it's time to act. We only have 60 places available this year to ensure the quality of your experience. Places will be filled by the first 60 people who are accepted into the program and confirm their place. This is an annual program, so if you're not starting this August, you'll have to wait another full year to apply. So, click the link below and complete your application today to secure your spot.
All right, welcome back. So if the CBI Erickson and Lanning Trainer Certification Institute is something that you're considering, it's helpful to think about who this is really for. This is for classroom teachers or team leaders who are looking to transform their classroom practice and deepen their understanding of what concept-based curriculum could look like in your classroom. It's for school and district leaders who are pedagogical leaders, who are looking to help teachers to design and refine their curriculum. It's for those who are interested in becoming workshop leaders or who are already workshop leaders and want to be able to feel confident leading on a topic of concept-based curriculum. It's also for curriculum coordinators and coaches who are going through the process like one we've shared today, who are leading the review of curriculum and who are supporting educators in writing concept-based units. It's for people who are interested in coaching online. We now have a growing group of online coaches who are giving feedback to educators in small group or one-on-one calls. It's for those who are interested in developing online workshops and developing model resources for educators around the world and for curriculum developers. We've recently leveraged a number of the skills of our certified trainers to develop the concept-based curriculum mathematics project. So that was a project where we brought together educators from all over the world to help us in writing a concept-based mathematics curriculum. So what's the investment? The cost is €7,490. I know that's a significant investment. However, if you're pitching that to school leaders at your school, remind them that that would be cheaper than a 2-day school workshop, and it's cheaper than having 10 staff participating in an online workshop. So if you're looking to justify that and get funding from your school, that's another way to think about it. If you have participated in the Erickson and Lanning CBI Trainer Certification Institute and you're here with us today, let us know in the chat your experience in that group. And Paul, I'll get you to play that second short video where some of our CBI graduates and current participants are sharing their experience of the Institute.
Hi, this is Aaron. So I work in UWC SEA Dover campus.
Hi, I'm Danny Barolo and I teach at St Mark's Lutheran School in the Adelaide Hills, South Australia.
Hi, I'm Tanu Jain and I'm from India.
I'm Megan Wilson. I'm a secondary physical education teacher at Basis International, Shenzhen, China.
I'm very passionate about the conceptual approach.
I participated in the Institute because I was eager to find out how concept-based learning would happen or could happen in my classroom.
As part of the Institute, because I'm very excited about concept-based, and I read the book, Rachel's book before, and then that really excited me to go deeper into it and be a consultant and a trainer myself, because I do a lot of training for my school.
I felt that I became a better educator as well as a better collaborator through the training of the Institute.
Really see the breakthrough and changes of students. They start to love the subject and love learning. So that's something, not only the engagement, but also from the exams itself. So really, really big change.
I think my time in the Institute was one of the most transformational things that I did for my learning and teaching.
It's worth the money because, end of the day, it's so engaging, it's so grilling, and so much to take back every day, so much practical to do it, and I feel.
If someone is considering joining the Institute, I would highly encourage them. It was a very valuable experience for me, and I was not only able to use it once the Institute was completed, but every week I learned something new and I was able to implement it immediately into my teaching.
Having the one-to-one sessions with specialist coaches, but also just to work through the things that you've come up with, the generalizations and the questions, to be able to improve them, to get constant feedback, that is priceless.
Everybody, if you can really do it, please go ahead, try it, because end of the day you will really feel it's worth doing it.
All right, there's a couple of questions that came up in the chat. One is there an ongoing payment once you're certified? No, there's not once you are certified. If you do take the independent certification option, which means that you pay at least 50% of the fee yourself, then you are certified for life and you can charge your own fees. That means that you can decide what you charge for a workshop, and for many of our participants, that means that the investment of $7,490 is equivalent to then leading a workshop for between 2 and 14 days. And the reason I say that is what people charge for the workshop is different depending on the region that they're working on and the amount of experience that they have had. But over time, if you are looking to go along that track and actually become a workshop leader, then that's something to consider. And for many of our educators, you can earn more than this if you develop your first online workshop or if you're looking at building out curriculum development materials. So it's just a way to consider that investment. It's about building leadership capacity, and that's why Dr. Erickson and Dr. Lanning started this. They knew that as they headed into retirement, they wanted others around the world to be able to continue to lead this work, who deeply understand concept-based approach and what it means in schools. So that's it in terms of our presentation. Paul has dropped the link in the chat, but Paul, if you can just pop that in again for anyone who wants to find out more about the trainer certification. And then I'm happy to answer any questions. So if you've got any questions, just pop them in the chat for me. I have picked up a few of the questions while you were watching the video. I was scrolling back through the chat to some of the questions that you'd asked. So the first one was, would you still use multiple understandings if you were working in the MYP? Absolutely. Our middle school students are more than capable of coming up with more than one idea. And that statement of inquiry, up until now, I know that there are big changes coming to the MYP and that they are actually encouraging more conceptual understandings. But with one statement of inquiry that included a key concept, a related concept, and a global context, it tended to be very broad and overarching. And in order to get more depth and rigor in our curriculum, we need to be articulating additional understandings. The next question was, do you feel like, or do teachers ever feel like their time is wasted if they had strong ideas about a unit, but that it didn't come through in the curriculum development process? And in actual fact, because we use that process of starting to combine ideas, we didn't really find that there were a lot of topics that we couldn't then include in our curriculum. Because we were addressing the idea of actually we've got 5 units that are actually looking at plants and animals, we could pare that back down to 2, one in our early part of our upper early years, so 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, or 6-year-olds, and then another one in later elementary. We could reduce the double ups, that we were able to put a lot more content into units. So we didn't really find teachers feeling like they'd wasted time because what they had suggested wasn't heard and incorporated into curriculum units. And if it was, then what they would find is when we got that feedback back from parents and students and teachers and the wider community and curriculum documents, theirs would be the one kind of sole idea that didn't have that bulk. And so that was that power of having those stacks of index cards, because they could see, I had this idea and I'm really passionate about it, but it's not coming from multiple other places. Whereas other ideas like financial literacy might come from 4 or 5 different places. And so then we would find that place for it. So it gave teachers a voice, but also helped them to see if that voice was a lone voice or if there was a lot of support for that idea. How long did the process take? Great question. So I've done it in several schools now. Typically it takes about 3, 4, 5 staff meetings, depending on how much buy-in you need to be working on. So sometimes those strategies, I've done a silent discussion and a full corner debate before, if I feel like I really need to get that buy-in, and that might take 1 or 2 staff meetings. Sometimes you can do something really quickly at the beginning and then move straight into your first part of the research process. The research that's done with parents, with students, and with the wider community is typically done by a smaller committee, and it's done outside of staff meeting time. But it typically was about a 6 to 8 week process. In that time, we had between 3 and 5 staff meetings, if that helps to give you a bit of a ballpark for how long you'll be needing to set aside. So that was it for the questions that I picked up. Any other questions? Let me know in the chat box. There's a few questions about certificates. We used to do certificates for masterclasses. We no longer do, just because it typically took up hours and hours of our time at this end. As a small team, we'd get floods of emails. We'd have people telling us that their name was spelt wrong, even though we copied and pasted it from the spreadsheet that they had filled in. So they'd mistyped their name. And so we just, as a small team, don't have the manpower to be doing all the certificates. We always offer certificates for our paid events, but we don't offer them for our free events anymore. Any other questions? Can a PYP school, which must have one central idea, reconcile with creating 5 to 9 understandings? Absolutely, Jason. I work with PYP schools all over the world. The central idea becomes one of the 5 to 9 understandings. So you're still meeting the requirement of the IB to have a central idea, but you're actually just exceeding their requirement. So you have additional conceptual understandings. Let me know in the chat box if you're currently working in a PYP school and developing more than one conceptual understanding, or MYP. Let us know. MYP, yes, we do. PYP, yes, we do. Just so that we can share as a community that this practice is happening around the world. What strategies might you suggest when people get to the point of looking across scope and sequence curriculum documents? So when we're looking, I think what you mean by this question is, as you're starting to analyze scope and sequence curriculum documents, what do we find from that? That's where I would use these cards and have them write up the solar system or the ecosystems. So they're capturing the topics from those scope and sequence documents or those curriculum documents. You're basically looking for the key word, which would often be a concept like solar system, water cycle, body systems, migration, and identifying that as a topic worth studying and putting one topic onto each card. Yep, so we're getting quite a bit of comment there. PYP, yes, definitely use more than one conceptual understanding. So much clearer for teachers and students. Oh, good question, Eduardo. Would the lines of inquiry be understood to create other generalizations as a starting point? Personally, I don't recommend that. And the reason for that is I like to share the lines of inquiry with students. And I use the lines of inquiry to help students understand a little bit about the content that we'll be exploring in the unit. So what will we be inquiring into? And that might be, in our example of ecosystems unit, it might be an inquiry into the living things in our local pond, river, and forest, an inquiry into an ecosystem of your choice. So it lets them know the content that they'll be exploring. So what I do with the 5 to 9 understandings, because I don't want to tell my students the understandings, we don't share the central idea or understandings with students. We support them in an inductive approach to build to their understanding. And what I'll do actually when we share the replay to this one, I'll also share the replay to another masterclass that I've done in the past, if anyone's missed it, to explain how we use 5 to 9 understandings and why we use an inductive approach to teach to them. And so we would then work through a process of supporting students to build those understandings themselves through our guiding questions. Where I put the understandings is just under the related concepts. So we have consensual idea or statement of inquiry, and then we have our key and related concepts. And then I just write related conceptual understandings, and I list my additional understandings there. I don't share them with students, but I use them to write my guiding questions. All right. Paul, let's make a note to make sure that we share the other masterclass as well in the email that goes out with the replay. And tomorrow is a public holiday in New Zealand, so please don't email us tomorrow and ask the replay. We'll be back in the office on Friday, and make sure that you get the replay because it's already 9:30 at night here on Wednesday. So Friday morning, we'll send out the replay to you. All right. Anyone else have any final questions before we finish up? Thank you so much for joining us from all over the world. It's great to bring together groups of educators who are passionate about supporting students in making a clearly articulated learning journey for our students that has rigorous units and is meaningful for our students and for our teachers and our wider learning community. All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.